Most runners don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they follow a lie that slowly drains their energy, their hormones, and their drive. The more disciplined they become, the worse they feel. And almost no one talks about why, until now. There is a lie almost every runner lives by. A lie that sounds disciplined, noble, and even heroic. The lie is this: if you want to become better, stronger, faster, you just need to run more. You see elite athletes logging insane mileage. You open Strava and watch people proudly post 90, 100-kilometer weeks. And without realizing it, something dangerous forms in your mind. If I'm running less, I'm weak. If I run more, I'm becoming someone. So you push harder. You wake up earlier, you train on tired legs and call it commitment. For a moment, it feels powerful. Then quietly, things start to break. Your progress stalls. Your body feels heavy. Your sleep gets worse. Your drive fades. Your injuries don't make sense anymore. You are doing everything right, and yet something is deeply wrong. Because biology doesn't reward effort. Biology rewards the correct dose. There is a precise amount of running that builds you into a stronger human being. And there is a point where running slowly turns against you, draining your energy, your hormones, and your life force. Runforce Mindset welcomes you. If you value science-based thinking and real performance without destroying your body, make sure you subscribe to the channel so we can keep bringing you content like this. Before we go on, let me ask you something. Which one do you believe? A. Running more always makes you stronger. B. Running smarter beats running more. Comment A or B below. If the first truth shook your belief, this next one will change how you see training forever. I want you to picture something simple, because the most powerful truths in physiology are never complicated. Imagine a graph. On one axis is your weekly running mileage. On the other is everything you care about but rarely measure: your energy, your performance, your recovery, your hormonal health. Most runners assume that as mileage goes up, all of those things rise with it. They imagine a straight line climbing endlessly upward. That assumption is where the damage begins. The real curve looks nothing like that. It rises fast at first, almost explosively, because the human body adapts quickly to new stress. Your heart becomes stronger, your metabolism more efficient, and your fitness improves rapidly. But that climb does not last forever. At a certain point, the curve reaches a peak. This is where stress and recovery are in balance, where the body is challenged just enough to grow but not enough to break. And then if you continue to push past that peak, the line turns downward. Not because you lack discipline, and not because you are weak, but because biology has limits. Beyond that point, every additional kilometer stops building for you and starts extracting a cost. Understanding where that peak lies is the difference between training that upgrades your system and training that slowly dismantles it. Now that you understand the curve, we can finally talk about what happens at the very beginning of it. This first zone sits roughly between 0 and 30 kilometers per week, and for many people, this is where their entire running life takes place. 3 runs a week, short, manageable distances, enough movement to feel productive without ever feeling overwhelmed. From a health standpoint, this zone is potent. It improves circulation, stabilizes blood sugar, lowers blood pressure, and restores metabolic flexibility. For someone coming from inactivity, the return on investment here is massive. This is where the biggest leap in overall health happens. But performance and health are not the same goal, and this is where many runners get confused. In this zone, the body adapts quickly and then settles into comfort. The heart is supported, but not pushed to change its structure. The muscles are activated, but not stressed enough to demand deeper mitochondrial growth. Everything improves just enough to feel good, and then it stops moving forward. Hormonal stress in this range is minimal. Testosterone is not threatened, but it is not meaningfully stimulated either. You feel stable, balanced, and safe. And that safety is exactly what makes this zone deceptive. It keeps you healthy, but it quietly caps your potential. You are not doing anything wrong here. But you are also not asking your body to become more than it already is. And once you see the ceiling of the comfort zone, the question becomes unavoidable. Where does real transformation actually begin? It begins in the range that most runners never stay in long enough, roughly 40 to 70 kilometers per week. This is the zone where training stops being maintenance and becomes construction. At this volume, the body is no longer simply supporting movement. It is forced to re-engineer itself. The heart adapts by expanding its chambers, allowing each beat to move more blood with less effort. Oxygen delivery improves not just during runs, but throughout the day. Inside the muscles, capillary networks grow denser, and the machinery responsible for producing energy multiplies. You become more efficient at using fat, more economical with glycogen, and more resistant to fatigue. But the real power of this zone lies in how stress and recovery interact. The training load is high enough to signal growth, yet low enough to be fully absorbed. Stress is delivered in sharp, deliberate doses, followed by real recovery. This rhythm tells the body that it is safe to adapt rather than defend. Body fat gradually decreases, reducing the hormonal drag that blunts performance. Recovery hormones rise naturally, restoring drive and vitality. This is why runners in this range feel different. They don't just run better, they live better. Energy returns, consistency becomes possible, and progress feels controlled rather than forced. This is the zone where fitness compounds instead of collapsing, where speed increases without sacrifice, and where strength is built without draining the system. And this is the moment where understanding turns inward, because knowledge only matters if you can recognize yourself inside it. For a second, stop thinking like an athlete and start observing like a human being. Look beyond your training log and listen to the quiet signals your body has been sending you. Has your morning drive faded in a way you can't explain? Do you feel exhausted during the day, yet restless and unable to sleep when night comes? Are you adding kilometers year after year while your race times refuse to move forward? These questions are uncomfortable because they bypass the ego and go straight to biology. They reveal whether the stress you are applying is being absorbed or silently accumulating. When two or more of these signals are present, it is rarely bad luck or poor genetics. It is usually a sign that the curve has already peaked and begun to turn downward. This self-audit is not meant to create fear, but clarity. Because once you recognize where you stand, you can stop guessing and start correcting. And that clarity is essential before we look at what happens when mileage continues to rise without recovery to match it. Once that realization sets in, it becomes easier to understand why pushing even harder often makes everything worse. This next range, roughly 80 kilometers per week and beyond, is where good intentions quietly turn into biological debt. Many runners enter this zone believing they are leveling up, copying what they see elite athletes do. But what they copy is mileage, not the environment that makes that mileage survivable. Professional runners live in a state of recovery. They sleep deeply, often for 10 hours or more. They nap, eat on schedule, and carry very little psychological stress. Most amateurs do the opposite, stacking heavy training on top of demanding lives. When that happens, the body shifts into survival mode. The stress response stays switched on. Cortisol remains elevated not for hours, but for weeks and months. This is not a training adaptation, it is a warning signal. Under constant stress, the body is forced to choose. It can invest resources into performance and repair, or it can prioritize survival. It cannot do both. Hormonal pathways adapt accordingly. Resources that could support strength, recovery, and vitality are diverted toward managing stress. Over time, muscle mass erodes despite continued training. Fat accumulates in places it never did before. Sleep becomes shallow. Mood changes, motivation fades, and progress slows to a crawl. What makes this zone dangerous is not the mileage itself, but the illusion that more effort will fix a problem created by excess stress. In this range, discipline stops being productive and starts becoming destructive. And this is where the story shifts, because the solution is not to fight harder, but to think differently. For most runners stuck in that downward spiral, progress does not come from adding more work, but from removing the right kind of stress. This is the idea behind what I call strategic laziness. It is not about doing less out of comfort, but about doing only what actually moves the needle. When excessive mileage is stripped away, the body finally gets space to recover. Energy stops leaking, sleep deepens, hormonal signals begin to normalize, quality replaces quantity. Instead of endless medium-effort kilometers that drain the system, training becomes precise. Hard sessions are tough, but they are limited and intentional. Easy days become genuinely easy, allowing the nervous system to reset. Strength training is introduced not as punishment, but as a signal for resilience and durability. Recovery is no longer an afterthought, it becomes part of the plan. What surprises most runners is the result. With fewer total kilometers, performance often improves. Muscles feel responsive again. Motivation returns. Consistency becomes sustainable. This is not because the body suddenly became stronger, but because it finally had the conditions required to adapt. Real fitness is built in recovery, and strategic restraint is often the fastest path back to progress. And when you finally experience that shift, you begin to realize that true progress has very little to do with chasing numbers. Most runners are taught to worship the stopwatch, the distance, the weekly total. But those metrics only tell you what you did, not what it did to you. Real optimization begins when training decisions are guided by how the body responds internally. Stress tolerance, recovery capacity, and biological resilience matter more than any single split or personal record. There is no universal mileage that works for everyone, because no two lives place the same demands on the nervous system. Finding your sweet spot means understanding yourself as a system, not a machine. It requires honesty about sleep, work stress, and recovery, not just ambition. Less mileage, when chosen intelligently, is not a step backward. It is a strategic decision to protect the engine that makes performance possible. If this perspective resonates with you, stay connected with Runforce Mindset. Here we train with respect for biology, not against it. That is how progress becomes sustainable and strength becomes something you can keep. At the heart of this entire discussion is a simple but often ignored truth. Progress is not created by force, but by alignment. When effort exceeds recovery, the body does not become stronger, it becomes defensive. Running like life follows biological laws whether we acknowledge them or not. When you respect limits, listen to signals, and apply stress with intention, growth becomes sustainable. When you ignore those signals and chase numbers blindly, even the strongest discipline eventually collapses. The deeper lesson goes beyond running. In your career, your relationships, and your health, more effort is not always the answer. The right effort, applied at the right time, is learn to find your personal sweet spot. Protect your energy, prioritize recovery, and choose quality over excess. That is how you build strength you can actually keep. Now I'd love to hear from you. Do you believe progress comes more from pushing harder or from recovering smarter? Please share your thoughts in the comments so everyone can learn from different perspectives. And if this content resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe to Runforce Mindset to support the channel and help us create more valuable content in the future.